I started working in marketing in the year 2000.
Okay.
So, I sound like a dinosaur, but we almost didn't have internet, or at least we didn't have any of the digital media options that you have today. So it was 100% traditional media. So that's obviously a huge change. And the other change, which we don't so much think about, but
You're scrolling through your favorite social media feed, bombarded with ads left and right, each one vying for your attention. But have you ever stopped and wonder if you're just a passive consumer or there's a hidden game at play? Welcome to Maven Talks. I'm your host Rakshit Kharbanda, and for today's episode, we have a remarkable guest who will challenge your perception of the marketing landscape. From memorable campaigns to evolving marketing landscape, we'll explore it all. Discover how brands cut through the digital noise, the relevance of mass targeting in a micro-targeted era, and the vital role of content creators. Our guest today, Professor Dorothee, will share some insights on true value of marketing and qualities of an excellent marketer. She will teach you how to adapt your strategies to different generations and gain inspiration from exceptional brands. Whether you are a curious consumer or an aspiring marketer, this episode is your backstage pass to understanding the tricks of the trade. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more episodes of Maven Talks.
I'm an SLK alumnus, graduated from the Master in Management program back in 1999. I spent 15 years working in marketing in big companies, first with Danone, so big FMCG company based in France, typical brand management jobs. And then I moved to a big pharma company, Novartis, in their consumer healthcare division, which is interesting because they both deal with consumers but also with healthcare professionals at the same time. And I spent 7 years there working in Switzerland, in France, and in Singapore. And then I switched gear to teaching a few years ago, and now I'm a professor of management practice in the marketing department.
Can you tell me about what made you shift from corporates to academia?
Well, a lot of reasons. Probably the main one was that I was looking for some more meaning in my professional life. Marketing is really exciting, really interesting, but sometimes you spend lots of energy and work working on projects that never lead to anything, which can be frustrating at times. You depend on your bosses and people around you. I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to, I guess, a bit give back in the sense that, I wanted to, find a different dimension that I couldn't find anymore with working in big companies.
Okay, that's interesting. And can you share any memorable campaigns or projects that you worked during your corporate tenure and the key lessons that you learned from it?
Sure. So when I was working for Danone, I was a marketing manager for a big brand of biscuits, which is very famous in France, called Prince. And at the time, so it's a brand aimed at children and mostly at mothers and children. And we had, so it was back 15 years ago, we had this whole heroic fantasy kind of brand positioning. It was in the big Harry Potter phase. So we had this very ambitious TV campaign that we were shooting that were requiring lots and lots of post-production. So we were actually aiming a bit too high maybe for, just a biscuit brand. So it took us months, lots of time, energy, and lots of money to maybe do something that was not necessarily focusing so much on the message and rather more on the execution. So it ended up being, those big projects that everybody was excited about because, it was like making a movie. But in the end, in terms of marketing incremental value, I'm not so sure. So that would be one, not so positive. Another one, which was more positive, which was on when I was working for Novartis, I worked on a brand called Otrivin, which is for nasal spray. And we had a very good relationship with the agency, which was Young and Rubicam. And at the time, it was not Young and Rubicam, sorry, it was Saatchi. And at the time, we decided to go on a platform which was much more humoristic than what happened before. And it was quite unusual. I mean, not unusual, but not so frequent for medicine, even for over-the-counter medicine, to adapt that. And we did a campaign with loads of tissues and people, drowning in tissues and so on. That were really real, really well in business. And we even got prizes and awards. And we had like a FE award for this campaign, which was great. So it was a lot of fun to be part of this good energy.
Okay. And how do you think marketing and advertising space has changed or evolved over the years since you started working?
Well, it has changed a lot, obviously, because I started working in marketing in the year 2000. Okay. So, I sound like a dinosaur, but we almost didn't have internet, or at least we didn't have any of the digital media options that you have today. So it was 100% traditional media. So that's obviously a huge change. And the other change, which we don't so much think about, but is that at the time I was working for a big global company called Danone, but we would still do everything at the local level. So when I was in charge of a brand for the French territory, we would do the whole marketing mix, from developing new products, developing new advertising campaign, to working with the retailers, to defining the price. So doing really both the development strategy and operational parts, which tend to be much more divided nowadays. Usually when you work in global companies, you have some big, teams working in the global headquarters and defining the strategic development and so on, and some other big teams working on the field in the countries and doing all the operational stuff.
When we talk about today's digital age, where we are bombarded with a lot of content, a lot of marketing messages, how do you think that brands can basically cut through that noise and make meaningful connections with their audience?
Oh, that's the big question. It's the $1 million question. I think that first, brands have always bombarded customers with messages before, social media and digital displays. It was with TV, because we were watching TV much more, and TV spots all the time, and the clutter on the press, and so it has always been cluttered anyway. Even more now in the digital age, it's a matter of targeting correctly who you want to talk to and being, genuine. So we've all experienced that when you receive tons of messages and you receive them 10 times and you receive them too late and so on. It's extremely annoying, and it's very irritant. And when brands manage to have the right message and to be able to say it in a relevant way, so on the right target, but not too much, is probably the best way. So it has to be authentic somehow. And more, I think, more related to what you want to say rather than just how many times you're going to say to whom.
Okay, and when we talk about a marketing message, one of the aspects that you highlighted was timing. Mm-hmm. When you convey that message. Second is the audience. What are other factors that you should take into account?
Well, the relevance of what you want to say. So obviously, and we've discussed this in class many times, but many brands tend to focus only on timing and audience, mm-hmm. and maybe on the the number of media outlets that you focus on. But you should rather think about what is it that you think is going to interest consumers about your brand, and how the message will resonate and be relevant. And I feel like this is in many cases a bit forgotten somehow. So you want to focus on the message, and you also want to focus on building a brand territory to make sure that, from one campaign to the next, they will recognize the brand, they will connect with what it had said before, so that, it builds a story somehow.
Amazing. So storytelling is a huge part of that ultimately.
Yeah, I think so. I was looking at some examples from, for example, Dove, the Unilever brand. They have been able to build a story over the past 20 years about, natural beauty and accepting oneself and so on. And so they have done it through lots of different ways, through social media, through TV, through outdoor, through, lots of combinations, using lots of different spokesperson and lots of different messages, but the story remains the same, and you recognize the brand, and you recognize what they are saying and why they are saying that. And I think, being able to build a story And every time you see a new campaign from Dove, you say, oh, okay, so they're putting that on top of what they were doing before, all right? So it started with like photoshopped images 20 years ago, and now they're talking about the impact of like Instagram on young girls and how it affects their image of themselves and so on. So it remains relevant through the ages, but they keep telling the same story.
Okay, so basically maintaining like a continuity in your story.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, that's interesting. And when you talk about advertising, there's like a lot of information about us publicly available, and brands basically try to leverage that information to micro advertise, like advertise and kind of target you as much as possible. So do you think in an age of micro targeting or advertising like that, is there still relevance for mass advertising? Because, for example, I'm not like a Dior or a Louis Vuitton customer, but I still see a lot of billboards, and instead of spending that a lot of money there, they could be targeting people who are actually could buy their products. So do you think mass advertising is still relevant?
Well, I'm not an expert of luxury, but what I understand from, a consumer standpoint, and once again, I'm not a big consumer of luxury either, but is that luxury, it works in two ways. It's self-satisfaction with, getting the product or the brand that you were dreaming of. And also there is a status, right? You want other people to see what you have. And for other people to see what you have, they must know the brand as well, right? So no one will admire you from purchasing a Birkin purse if they don't know how exceptional it is to own a Birkin purse. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
it has to be recognizable somehow to make sure that you get the full effect of luxury, which is a self-satisfaction, I would say, and also status communication. And I think that mass marketing in that case, everybody needs to understand and recognize, the LV monogram or the Chanel double C. They have to be part of the popular culture to make sure that they are really at the top of the luxury food chain, I would say.
When huge brands advertise, they usually go up to celebrities or film stars with millions of followers, so they can reach a huge audience. Do you think content creators carry or have some role in this changing landscape of advertising and marketing?
Well, for me, content creators or influencers, celebrities, no matter how we call them, it's the same idea than regular advertising, which is you have to decide between mass advertising and targeted advertising. And in the case of content creator, if you reach out to Ariana Grande or Selena Gomez or Kim Kardashian, it's mass. It's mass advertising, one way or another. And if you reach out to 10,000 small content creators, it's targeted advertising. So both have pros and cons. Obviously, the big pro of going to, Kim Kardashian or Ariana Grande or whoever is that it can go very fast to reach a huge amount of people. I don't know how many, hundreds of millions of followers they have, but it's in that scale, obviously. So you can, it can be very efficient, fast. But going through 10,000 small content creators allows you to curate your message and to have much more targeted, but it's also very time consuming. And sometimes the risk is the same, because you could say it's more risky to put all your eggs in the same basket with Kim Kardashian or whoever. But there was a recent example with Bud Light, the beer brand in the US, where they reached out to lots of different content creators, and somehow they reached out to one of them. I don't remember the name, Dylan Mulroney or something like that, who is a trans person who is not very famous, but he's a little bit famous in the US. And even though it was 1 out of 10,000 content creators, it got really, really viral. And a big part of the American population was very pissed at the brand for choosing to partner with this content creator because of, transphobia issues and so on. And so it got as much impact in the end as if they would have taken the risk with only one celebrity, even though it was 1 out of 10,000, because, the internet ball rolled very, very fast. So yeah, it really depends in the end on your strategy, but I would assume that the best way would be actually to get a bit of both.
Okay.
To reach widely with one big celebrity and at the same time go precisely with different content creators, not maybe 10,000 small creators.
And in your experience, like how would you define the true value of marketing for business beyond just sales and revenue generation? Because the idea behind marketing is that you need more sales. But what does marketing do beyond that?
Well, at the root of marketing, the objective is to fulfill consumer needs. All right. So you have to understand what consumer will be wanting in the future, what will, be exciting for them, and make sure that you can fulfill those projects. So be it, with new technologies, be it with, organic cosmetics and natural cosmetics, be it with new solutions that are more environment friendly and so on. You have somehow to anticipate and respond to consumers' needs so that it helps, shaping how the society is evolving. That would be, the dream at the roots of marketing. And obviously, creating value and generating profits is the sine qua non condition, because otherwise, you just don't exist. And then the last one, which is very important in marketing, is building brands and, making sure, and that's one of the parts that I find very exciting as well, is that really making sure that you build something that consumers recognize, that consumers remember, and that they can, feel connected to. When, as an example, when I was working for Danone, I was also in charge at some point of another brand, which is a very French biscuit brand called Granola, but that was working very well with teenagers and young adults. And I remember at the time, anytime I was having a dinner with people anywhere, anytime, as soon as I said that I was in charge of Granola, people got so excited. Oh, I love this brand, I have it, and so on. And they were sharing experiences with me. And I thought it was so great, to be able to connect with everybody, because everybody knew the brand and everybody was excited with the brand. And you feel like, you're having, yes, some kind of connection with people.
Interesting. And what do you think are like the top qualities of an excellent marketer or a marketing professional?
Well, I think that the first one, and it's probably not the one that people would think about the most, is being very at ease with the numbers. Marketing is about data. It's not about big data processing. It's about being able to very quickly get, the big idea of what's working well, what's not working well, analyzing all the data that you have at your disposal, be it, internal data for your sales, or be it, market research information, or information that you upload from Google or whatsoever. But you have to be very agile with analyzing the data and being on top of that. And I think the second big quality is probably curiosity, being, always open to what's happening and what people are talking about, and maybe, what would be interesting for your target audience and so on. And I think the third one is probably being like an orchestra chief, I don't know how you say it in English, where you have to, in a company as a marketeer, you always have to, you don't do a lot, but you don't do a lot by yourself, actually. You make other people work for you. So be it, the finance team, be it R&D team, be it the agencies that you work with, be it, the sales reps and so on. You usually make sure, because you don't have a lot of skills as a marketeer, except, trying to manage the others and making sure that everybody is convinced of what you want to do and work with you on it. So this orchestra kind of management is a very important skill, I think, to have.
Okay. And can you shed some light on techniques that are employed by large companies or brands to basically influence consumer psychology and drive purchasing decisions?
Well, that's a tough question. I don't think that a lot of marketeers and a lot of companies have, constantly in mind the cognitive biases and this type of, theoretical ideas that are extremely important to understand consumer behavior, but that are not on the front of your thoughts any given day. All right. So it's usually once you start, testing new concepts or new ideas with Market Research Institute that you take those biases and this consumer psychology into consideration. But on a daily basis, I don't think this is something that, that you work a lot on your own. It's really about, developing new tools or developing new products and making sure that when you test different options, you take this into consideration.
For example, when you were talking about brands, the thing is brands spend like a lot of time and money into making sure that you can say recognize the product, you do that storytelling and basically publicize it over decades so it stays in the market. But for example, the Levis 501s, so I heard that in I think 1970s or maybe before when it was released, it was like a huge hit. And everybody was talking as if it was like a Nike Jordan. So everybody was talking about it at one point in time. But the thing is, when their audience became kind of older, for example, people in end of 30s or 40s, they started wearing those jeans. And the younger generation, say the Gen Z and millennials, felt that, okay, the Levi's 501s is for that kind of audience. Why should I wear it? What do you think that marketers can do basically to adapt that message to changing needs and preferences of different generations, such as Gen Z and millennials?
Well, it's a tough question, and I obviously don't have the answer. But in the case of Levi's, or maybe, like a Nike or Adidas, you have this attractiveness at one point, which is like generational, as you said, like the Levis 501.
Yeah.
105. A few decades ago, and then it went down because it looked like something your parents would wear.
Exactly.
And then it came back again. And it's the same with the shoes, like the Stan Smith from Adidas. They were the craze like 30 years ago that they went down. Then a few years ago, they came back full speed. And then once everybody had them, it went back down again. So it's also for brands a matter of being, paying attention to withdrawing it almost from the market when you see that it's too much everywhere, and bring another thing for another generation maybe, and then after a while bring it back once it looks fresh again. I don't know how to say it, but Levi's, I think that's what they've done. I don't know all the different combinations that they have, but I know that the 501 was definitely extremely popular in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and then it went a bit old-fashioned, and now it's back. And I mean, as an older person, it's always funny to see, what younger generations, like, teenagers and young adults are adopting the same criteria for fashion that were, very outdated for me when I was that age, because it looked like what my parents would have been wearing 10 years before me, and now it's coming back. I mean, it's an eternal cycle. So It all matters for the brands to, stay relevant by having more than one type of product to sell so that they can actually alternate, I guess.
Communicate with different audiences.
Yes.
Yeah. And from your experience in marketing, can you share like 3 brands that you personally admire for their exceptional marketing strategies? And can you tell me something about them that sets them apart?
Dove would be definitely an example for the reasons that I mentioned, the extreme relevance of their main purpose, which is, the real beauty, which I think is really grounded in a very strong consumer insight from women, which is that they don't feel that they are, pretty enough, and they feel like, they have lots of body issues. That would be definitely one. It's tough. Another one, so we talked about Levi's 501. I think that they are making a remarkable comeback with a very relevant, sustainable message. Because, as we said, they have been there for like 50 years. And actually, they have this new campaign. It's like you're not going to be the only one to wear it. And they have this campaign where you see first someone like in the 70s having a brand new 501, and then, they spend their days and so on. They live with it, and then it goes to a vintage store and someone else gets it, and then someone else and someone else. And you see the life of the pair of jeans over like, I don't know, a few decades. And I think it's a very strong way of one saying that it's a very robust product that, will never, it's the antithesis of fast fashion. Okay. So plus it's surviving all different types of fashion crazes and so on, and it's still relevant. And it's, no matter what state it is, it's still good looking. All right. So, and only Levi's has the credentials to say that, right? Because it's the only brand for jeans that really dates back from I don't know when, and that has always remained the same. So I think it's a very powerful.
Okay. And what advice do you have for individuals who are starting their career in marketing or want to start their career in marketing?
So maybe it's a bit controversial to say that nowadays, but I would start by working on big brands in big companies. I think that what is important in marketing is to see different types of situation, different types of brands. And I think that as exciting as it is to work in small startups that are dynamic and so on, you still have very limited money with very limited impact. And if you start working there, you might not get the full spectrum of what you can actually do. And if you had money and data and people working with you, what you could achieve. And I think it's probably more interesting to start working in big companies and keep learning about, different techniques, different issues, etc. Fail and redo, and then move on to smaller companies, smaller brands, and having more impact, rather than starting working on your own with nobody knowing what you're gonna do, because no one knows, because no one has ever done it, and just learning on your own. I think you will not have the same width of experience in the end, and the same curriculum at the end of the day.
Why did you think it was controversial?
It's just that I feel like most students want to start their own companies or work in small companies. Like they want to work in DNVBs that are very agile and so on, and they working in growth marketing, which is interesting and makes a lot of sense, but half of those companies will die in the next few years, and I'm not sure that you gain the same level of experience than you would have with the big companies. When I was graduating from ESSEC, everybody wanted to work in the big companies because that's they were like the schools of marketing, like Procter and Gamble and L'Oréal and Danone and so on. And it's not the same anymore. And I'm not saying that everybody should go back to those big companies, but I'm saying that going to a company that has a robust marketing team, that has a big amount of money, and a wide array of potential brands and consumer issues is quite interesting to get started with.
Okay. Lastly, could you share some top recommendations of book, of courses that you have in back of your mind that we could explore?
In terms of books, I always like to talk, we were talking about cognitive biases before. I always think that looking at what nudge marketing is doing, so, the works of maybe Daniel Kahneman with Thinking Fast and Slow, or Dan Ariely with Predictably Irrational, are quite interesting to see how the consumer mind and the consumer behavior works. I think it's quite interesting. On a totally different aspects, I really enjoy reading the columns of Mark Ritson. He's a British marketing professor, now living in Australia, I believe. And he's the columnist at Marketing Week. And it's usually pretty spot on what he says.
Thank you for watching till the end. After listening to this, if you feel inspired and motivated, then share this episode with your friends and family. Together, let's empower others to chase their dreams and create a ripple effect of success. Remember, greatness is achieved when knowledge is shared. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next episode.